The Mexican government spent years hunting the most dangerous narco alive. Helicopters over Jalisco and cities locked down in fear. But this wasn't just about one boss, because before El Mencho, there was the legend who escaped prison twice. Joaquín Guzmán, also known as El Chapo. 2 different empires and 2 different kings, and one question that still haunts Mexico: who truly ruled the narco world? Stay until the end, because the answer is not who you think. El Chapo grew up in the mountains of Sinaloa, a place where the soil was thin, the roads were dirt, and the opportunities were few. His father grew marijuana and poppies. It wasn't unusual. Entire villages survived on it. Young Joaquín learned early that survival meant bending rules, moving quietly, and trusting almost no one. He dropped out of school. He worked in the fields, and he watched men return home with more money than honest work could ever bring. In another part of Mexico, in Michoacán, a boy named Nemesio worked avocado fields under a burning sun. He came from nothing. He saw the same truth El Chapo saw. In a country where corruption was currency, crime was often the fastest ladder out of poverty. As a teenager, he crossed into the United States illegally. He picked fruit in California and was arrested, deported, and returned again. He learned about borders, about police, and how systems could be bent. Neither boy imagined that they would one day command armies. Not everyone who enters the crime mansion stays, but if you're still here, you might belong. Subscribe and don't miss the next story. El Chapo's rise began in the 1980s under Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the godfather of Mexican cartels. In those years, Colombia produced the cocaine, and Mexico moved it north. Young traffickers learned logistics like businessmen learn accounting. El Chapo drove trucks, coordinated shipments, and proved himself ruthless enough to survive. When the Guadalajara cartel collapsed, Mexico's drug world fractured into pieces, and El Chapo seized his chance. With partners like Ismael El Mayo Zambada, he helped form what became the Sinaloa cartel. And from there, the empire grew like wildfire. Planes landed on secret runways in the desert. Submarines crossed oceans. Bribes flowed to police, politicians, and border guards. El Chapo understood networks. He built relationships across continents. He treated smuggling like an industry, a machine that ran day and night. By the late 1990s, he was already a legend. But legends attract enemies. In 1993, he was arrested in Guatemala and sent to a Mexican prison. For most men, that would have been the end. For El Chapo, it was a delay. In 2001, he escaped hidden inside a laundry cart, rolling past guards who had been paid to look the other way. He disappeared into the mountains, rebuilding his empire stronger than before. And when he was captured again years later, he escaped once more through a tunnel dug straight into his cell, complete with rails, lighting, and ventilation. It sounded like fiction, but it was real. El Chapo became myth. Songs were written about him, movies were inspired by him, and children in Sinaloa played games pretending to be him. But while the world watched El Chapo, another man was learning quietly in the shadows. El Mencho didn't come from the old smuggling families. He built himself from the ruins of smaller cartels. For a time, he even worked as a local police officer, gaining insight into how investigations worked, how raids were planned, and how corruption could be exploited. Later, he joined the Milenio cartel. When that organization fractured after arrests, Nemesio seized control of what remained and reshaped it into something new: the Cartel Jalisco Nueva Generación. Unlike the old cartels, this cartel didn't hide its strength, it displayed it. Videos surfaced online showing columns of masked men in military uniforms, carrying rifles and rocket launchers. Armored trucks rolled through towns. They attacked police stations. They shot down a Mexican military helicopter in 2015, a moment that shocked the world. CJNG was not just a smuggling network, it looked like a private army. But where El Chapo built tunnels, El Mencho built battalions. By the early 2000s, Mexico had changed. Cocaine was no longer the only prize. Synthetic drugs like methamphetamine and fentanyl brought enormous profits. CJNG specialized in these new markets. Laboratories in remote mountains produced chemicals that flooded into the United States. Within a few years, CJNG spread across Mexico faster than any cartel before it. Experts began to whisper that El Mencho might be even richer than El Chapo at his peak. But power isn't only measured in money. El Chapo ruled through connections. He bribed governors. He negotiated with rival cartels. He used alliances as weapons. Violence was part of his world, but it was calculated. El Mencho's CJNG used terror openly. Entire towns were burned. Roadblocks appeared overnight. Bodies were left as warnings. The message was simple: resist, and you disappear. Some analysts said El Mencho represented a new generation of cartel boss, one shaped by the militarization of Mexico's drug war. As governments cracked down, cartels adapted, becoming more violent, more disciplined, and more ruthless. And so the narco world split into two eras, before El Mencho and after. Meanwhile, El Chapo's story was approaching its end. After his second capture in 2016, Mexico extradited him to the United States. In a courtroom in Brooklyn, prosecutors laid out decades of crimes, tons of cocaine, countless murders, bribery on a global scale. In 2019, he was sentenced to life in prison. No escape this time. He now sits in a maximum security prison in Colorado, isolated, his empire run by others. El Chapo faced a courtroom in the end. Shackled, surrounded by federal agents, his empire laid bare before a jury in Brooklyn. But for years, the other king stayed in the shadows. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes avoided capture again and again, disappearing into mountains guarded by loyal gunmen and silent villages that feared his name. Then, according to government reports last week, everything changed. A military operation in Jalisco ended with gunfire, chaos, and the death of the man they had hunted for more than a decade. Within hours, cities burned, roads were blocked, and Mexico held its breath. The most wanted narco in the country was finally gone, but the cartel he built is still alive. So who ruled Mexico? El Chapo built one of the largest smuggling networks in history. His tunnels alone became symbols of ingenuity and corruption. He connected South America to North America in a web of money and influence that lasted decades. El Mencho built the most aggressive cartel of the modern era. CJNG challenged the Mexican state directly. It adapted to synthetic drugs, cyber communications, and global markets faster than its rivals. El Chapo was a businessman of crime. El Mencho was a general of crime. One shaped the narco world through strategy. The other reshaped it through force. But maybe the real answer lies not in who was richer or more feared, but in what they left behind. Think of the families who fled their homes in Michoacan, the children who grew up hearing gunfire like thunder, the police officers buried without names because they refused bribes, the farmers who planted poppies because they had no other way to feed their families. These men became legends, yes, but their legends were built on thousands of lives. Today, the Sinaloa cartel still exists. CJNG still operates. New bosses rise, old bosses fall. The narco war continues, generation after generation. In some towns, the cartel is still stronger than the state, and maybe that is the truth that matters most. Because in the end, no king rules forever. El Chapo sits in a cell, his empire fractured but alive, and El Mencho is dead according to official statements from Mexican authorities. Their names will be remembered in history books and crime documentaries, symbols of an era when drug cartels shaped nations. But Mexico remains, and somewhere in a small village, another boy grows up poor, watching men return home with more money than honest work could ever bring. And another story begins. Not everyone walks through every door in the crime mansion, but if you are still here, you might belong. Subscribe, and don't miss what's behind the next one.